Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here and welcome to another Final Fantasy XVI video. In this one, I want to talk a little bit about the gameplay basics and customizing your gameplay in Final Fantasy XVI. Being an action RPG, there are two elements that are essential to the game's formula. The first is fast and responsive action gameplay that is approachable for inexperienced players, but with a lot of depth for hardcore action gamers. The second is the RPG elements of the game, how you customize your gameplay to fit you, improve stats, and build up to something that feels like, well, an extension of you. Well, I got to play Final Fantasy XVI in London back in April, so I wanted to talk more about these elements now that I can share some of that experience with you. Gameplay-wise, these two things function in layers for how you build your Clive, with the core gameplay acting as the base and the icons acting as your customization. So let's start with Clive's basic gameplay, what to expect, and some tips on how to utilize his moveset more efficiently. Before we get started though, thanks again to Square for having me out to London. It was a blast. Everything I'm talking about here is just based on my experience, and the footage present in the video is not my own. It's basically B-roll that we were provided for the event, so I have something going on in the background. It's also all from a special version of the game made for media to experience. There's going to be a little tag at the bottom throughout most of the video, so contents may differ from the final version, names of abilities, whatever. So now that that's done, let's get to it. Clive's basic gameplay is focused entirely on how he handles his sword. He has basic ground and aerial combos, a gap closer, some movement-related skills, and various types of strikes. For most beginner players, just learning to do these basic combos will be the first step that you take, but there's a lot more to it that you can improve on as you play the game. He also gets a basic magic spell he can use that changes depending on the icon equipped, and a defensive ability that can change also depending on the icon equipped. These things all represent the basic gameplay loop of avoiding damage and then dealing damage to the enemy. However, like I said, there's a lot more to it, so let's cover some things that you should know before you pick up the game on June 22nd. Timing button presses is among the most basic things that you can work to master in Final Fantasy XVI. An easy one the game teaches you is pressing magic at the end of basic attacks and combos to perform a magic burst, which can enhance the power of the spell and change its properties depending on when you use it. For example, Phoenix's magic burst changes from a simple ranged projectile into a fast-traveling missile that knocks the enemy back and into the air if you perform it after the final hit in a basic ground combo. Something like this sets up basic other follow-ups, such as sending Torgal to juggle the enemy, even just having Torgal immediately bash them to the ground so you can gap close with the Phoenix Shift and then perform a ground attack. You can also just follow with the Phoenix Shift and juggle the enemies in the air. So there's already a lot of potential with just this one skill. More advanced magic burst combos will open up. Clive can actually weave smaller magic bursts between all of his basic attacks for more pressure and damage, so if you manage to just time those back and forth presses real quick, or combo more efficiently with stronger aerial skills or iconic abilities, you're going to get a lot more mileage out of simply timing your button presses. Even something so simple just gives Clive so many ways to style on his opponents. Now, that's not the only timing related thing. Some of Clive's skills may require you to not just spam press the attack buttons. Doing small delays can change up Clive's combos to open up attacks that may be more powerful or just have completely different combat properties. Again, for experienced character action players, this is kind of a second nature thing, but for others, learning to not just spam can improve your gameplay a whole lot. Clive also learned skills that let him charge his sword and magic. By holding the respective button for a few seconds, he performs a powered-up slice or a powered-up magic blast that again deals more damage and has different properties. I'm using those terms a lot, but I'm trying to be vague because we don't have all the icons, so I can't tell you what they all do in one single video. Clive being on the ground or being airborne or even the size of the enemy can change these attributes as well. One thing to really enhance your gameplay immediately is to learn how to hold these skills while performing other combos. For example, while performing a sword combo, you can hold the magic button to charge that up, so you can release that and open up new extended combo options, or even just have a stronger finisher after your basic combo. The sword is much the same, giving you some added oomph, and charging your sword can have a lot of other uses that you can actually see in the footage that you're watching now. Charging your sword is also much easier to do when using iconic abilities, as the animations for these can be just another second or so longer, and that's usually enough time to hold the sword button and set things up. You can also try to hold your sword and your magic at the same time if you really want to. You can also initiate things such as the Phoenix Shift, and then use that time to begin charging your sword. You actually see that a lot with the air juggling in the footage we were provided, that fire-charged upward slice being the result of a charged sword skill. Now there's one thing I want to emphasize on, and that's the ability to change the control scheme. The basic one is designed to be sort of recognizable. It makes sense given the UI, but having your attacks, your basic ones on square and triangle, can make doing these held methods just a little bit harder if you're not the most dexterous with your hands. Fortunately, in the preview we got to play, there were multiple control schemes, and some of them definitely felt more tailored to using these types of things. So I would highly recommend checking out the other control schemes to find something that works for you. Now, Clive's mobility is also very important. On top of his air and ground dodges and iconic abilities, he has a number of other tools to navigate the battlefield. One basic one is the ability to jump off of enemies to do sort of a double jump or a dodge, but this has very important implications for both his offense and his defense. The most basic thing you can do is use this to stay on the offensive, get in close for an aerial combo, then jump off and maybe even behind the enemy and continue the assault while they unleash whatever is in front of them. However, it can also be used to extend combos, especially on larger enemies, where it's far easier to do this type of technique. Once you finish a basic aerial combo, step off of the enemy to animation cancel and begin another aerial combo right away. You can do something like use Clive's downward slice, hit them several times on the way down, and then midway down jump off the enemy to perform another aerial combo or downward slice. Again, a little bit easier to do on the bigger enemies that don't get juggled around in the air so much. Of course, I'm only explaining very basic things without really factoring in too much of the iconic abilities, but these should be the simplest swordplay mechanics to practice even in the early game. Of course, amongst Clive's mobility is his dodge, which I'll go a little bit into more detail later. The most basic version of it in the early game simply allows Clive to avoid damage, while also opening up all sorts of counterattack options. Shoot magic, gap close with your sword, or perform an enhanced combo. There's tons of things that you can do. The options are plentiful, so when you're comboing and have to interrupt yourself to dodge, it doesn't feel like you were just stopped in your tracks. It actually feels like the dodge into another attack is just a continuation of the combo you were already doing. It's very smooth, and it was one of the things I enjoyed the most. And it's rare that I enjoy stopping my offense to dodge, but they did such a good job of making it fun in this game. Speaking of icons, now for stage 2 of Clive's gameplay. I could keep going on the swordplay stuff, but I think I've given you enough of that for now. But stage 2 is customization. Icons make up the bread and butter of tailoring your gameplay experience to the things that work best for you, and gradually unlock as you play throughout the game. Clive may have up to 3 icons equipped at once, but hey, if you only like having 2 equipped and prefer to keep things a little bit more narrow, feel free to do that as well. Again, these are representations of you, not something you have to follow down to the letter. Each of these icons has their own unique playstyle that they enforce while they are currently equipped. This was incredibly evident even in the small chunk of gameplay I got to experience. Now, in the gameplay preview, I got to play 3 icons across the various sections that we were given access to. Now, those 3 were Phoenix, Garuda, and Titan, probably the 3 you've seen the most of in the various trailers, and so it's not a surprise those are the ones I got to play. Each of them had sort of a formula with the skills we had access to, at least in the build that we played. 2 were basic damage and utility skills, usually something that's a little bit closer to single target, but not really, and then something that was AoE with some sort of other property like knocking enemies down or knocking enemies into the air. There was a counter of some kind on all of them, and the final one was an ultimate, each packing some serious damage, utility, or supportive effects. Now, first up was the Phoenix, and it features a hyper-aggressive playstyle that focuses on keeping the pressure on opponents. Its skill feature a range of basic combat actions, but none are more useful than the Phoenix Shift to dash towards an enemy. You've seen this skill a billion times, but I can tell you that it feels even better to use than it looks in all the trailers. Now, this type of skill is actually called an iconic feat, and it's on the right side of Clive's action list in the bottom right of the screen. That will change depending on which icon you have, and fortunately, the ability will be there and present for you to keep track of. In addition to that, the Phoenix has Rising Flames, which deals damage to the enemies right in front of Clive. It looks like it knocks them in the air, but I never animation canceled efficiently enough to juggle them off of this, so I often use this to do things like pressure the stagger gauge or to just instantly wipe out weaker opponents or abuse an already staggered opponent. Scarlet Cyclone, which does AoE damage and slightly knocks enemies away, great for clearing out packs and especially if you're surrounded. There was Heat Wave, which allows Clive to destroy an incoming projectile if it's timed properly, and then shoot out a giant sword. However, if you successfully destroy an incoming projectile, then the number of swings that Clive follows up with goes up significantly, increasing the damage. So while you can just use it to fire off the one attack if you just need that ranged attack or just need the damage, if you use it in that more skillful manner, it will do a lot more. Finally, Flames of Rebirth, which was a bunch of AoE damage, and it healed Clive and his allies. On a very long cooldown, mind you. Those ultimates are something you will not use very frequently, and I imagine that most people will bring at most one ultimate across their 3 icons in most given situations. Next up was Garuda, which focused on fast and frenetic gameplay, allowing Clive to dodge and stay mobile while bombarding enemies with rapid strikes. It also holds a sway over the air and assists in juggling opponents quite efficiently. For abilities, it has Gouge, which repeatedly swipes at enemies, stopping fodder in their tracks and punishing staggered opponents for as long as you continue to hit the button. Wicked Wheel is a quick AoE that lifts enemies up slightly, especially useful during aerial combos or even for picking enemies up nearby at ground level. It has a dodge counter as well, whose name escapes me. I was too busy playing to write these things down, where Clive backsteps and performs a follow-up attack. And the follow-up attack deals more damage if you actually dodged an attack with the initial backstep. It finally summons a giant cyclone that whisks enemies up into the storm and opens up combos or alleviates pressure from the large enemy groups. It can also heavily punish larger enemies that just end up being forced to stand in it the entire time. Garuda's iconic feat is Deadly Embrace, which actually has 2 main functions. First, Clive can use this skill to pull smaller enemies towards them, which can just be great for singling out opponents when a ton of enemies are standing together and you may not have any other abilities. However, if you use this on a larger enemy, then you get its second function. Bigger enemies can't just be pulled towards Clive willy-nilly, so instead, when he's up close to them, it allows him to do sort of an aerial combo and get above them. This can be used for dodging skills or just chaining your air combos together on enemies that are large enough to be hit, whether you're in the ground or the air. You see that a lot on this enemy here in the footage. However, if an enemy's stagger gauge hits the half mark, you'll notice they kind of falter for a second, and in plenty of trailers you've probably seen Clive drag them to the ground for a few seconds. That's what happens when Clive uses Deadly Embrace at that 50% stagger mark. It'll pull them to the ground and open them up for a few more attacks. Now finally, Titan, who I had the least amount of time with, so unfortunately it's probably the one I'm least knowledgeable about, but trust me, do you get a feel for Titan very, very quickly. It has overwhelming power, and it's able to hold its ground against enemies instead of dodging. And also, you know, he fights well against the ground, whereas Garuda fought well against the air. No surprise there. Now, unfortunately, I only got to see 3 of his skills in my time, though trailers can probably inform me of what his ultimate looks like. In fact, I know we've seen his ultimate. It's the giant, like, table flip. It's Mountain Buster, basically, or Landslide. I guess I have to go back to the trailer and look for it. I'll put it on as text on the screen, but we've definitely seen that in a trailer. Now, Titan's big gimmick is that he has charged skills, meaning that a timed release of the button changes the properties and increases the damage. A perfectly timed release will greatly increase the damage and properties and allow you to absolutely obliterate things. When I say landing a perfectly timed Titan skill is the best feeling thing I did, it's the best feeling thing I did. First, he has Wind Up, which has him pull his fist back and charge it up before punching forward, dealing huge damage and knocking smaller opponents away. Upheaval deals massive AoE, but can be quickly activated just to flatten nearby enemies into the ground for less damage. If you use it in the air, Clive will actually slam down and knock enemies directly up as well, setting up aerial combos for something like Garuda. Raging Fist is a counter where, by default, without the counter, Clive will just punch enemies in the ground. Art director Minagawa actually said this was his favorite skill, but a well-timed counter, on the other hand, will greatly improve the damage of this skill. And then again, that ultimate, which looks like a giant, again, I'll put the name on the screen. In fact, I'll go find the trailer and just edit it in right here, because again, I know we've seen this skill before in the trailers, but yeah, that's Titan's ultimate skill, and it looks like it just sends everything flying in the opposite direction and wipes everything out. Titan's iconic feat is Titanic Block, or Titanic Block, we'll go with that, which allows him to stand his ground and block an opponent as opposed to dodging. If you perfectly time a block as you receive an oncoming attack, you'll perform a Titanic counter, which allows you to punch the enemies over and over again. Now, you do still have the dodge available, but if you're somebody who prefers to block instead of dodge, then you may lean in Titan's direction just for this iconic feat. Now, each of these icons support a specific gameplay style, and alongside the other icons we've seen in trailers and gameplay segments, you'll likely land on one as your main icon. Director Hiroshi Takai, for example, considers Shiva his main icon, according to an interview I conducted with Naoki Yoshida when I was in London. By the way, be sure to go watch that interview. Now, if you like to constantly go forward and be aggressive, Phoenix will likely be where you spend the majority of your time. If you like to dance around doing aerial combos and abuse those half staggers, then Garuda is welcome. And if you prefer to play a bit slower and to the ground and would just like a block option, then Titan's going to be your winner. However, each of them also supports each other in much the same way, either covering for the weaknesses of the other ones or enhancing what you're able to do with them. Even for example, let's say if you main Phoenix because you love the shift. You may still want to keep Garuda on hand for Deadly Embrace, whether it's to get into the air or for those quick staggers on the ground. And Titan's huge damage and juggle potential is something that you can just never turn down if that's what you like doing. And if you main Titan, for example, you may enjoy actually having mobility options with things like the Phoenix Shift or Garuda. So again, the combinations are limitless, and every single person is going to feel a different way about different skills. In all honesty, these three that I got to play almost seem tailored to each other. I mean, in all the trailers that we saw from the early days, these three were like the first three we ever saw combined. And they all felt like close range icons other than that one skill from the Phoenix, and I guess if you want to include it, the Cyclone from Garuda. Now, in other trailers, we've seen Shiva, Bahamut, and Ramu, and all of them had attacks that allow you to create or abuse distance, marking them almost as kind of like ranged icons. Odin seemed to support rapidly zipping around the arena and following up staggers with rapid and powerful hits, not to mention destroying them with Zantetsuken. At the end of the day, everyone will find aspects about all of these icons they either like or don't like, and you'll build around your personal interests. On top of that, through Clive's skill upgrades, if you really like certain skills, you can pour more points into upgrading those and make them more powerful. So you can even define your gameplay around which upgrades you get early and which skills you like most. And man, combined with Clive's gameplay, I mean, the sky's the limit with this one. And I haven't gone into stuff like Torgal being able to set up aerial combos or punish enemies in the air and instantly knock them to the ground. You can start combos with him, extend combos with him, heal yourself with him a little bit. And then the limit break, which is not only huge damage as well as some healing over time to Clive, but also allows you to animation cancel and extend combos even further. So you may see this high tier limit break tech as people get really into it, especially in the training mode where you're just going to be able to go nuts, and the arcade mode where we're really going to see those ultra competitive people get some crazy things off. I can't wait. I can't wait to get my hands on the full game on June 22nd. Anyway, that's going to be a wrap for this video. I could go on and on and on, but I'm sure you've gotten what you want out of this. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and stay tuned. I've got more Final Fantasy 16 stuff on the way, whether it be opinions or watching some of the videos they've released, analyzes, whatever. I'm just excited to talk about Final Fantasy 16. Anyway, I'll see you all in the next one. And until then, take care.